to death, etc. This is not why we are here today. At Oxford Africa Society, we set the pace for many others to follow. A decade into our conferences, we have realized that it serves no one any good use to keep repeating the challenges that from the days of Nkrumah, from the days of Mandela, that from the days of Kenneth Kaunda, from the days of Iyadema, and from the days of Modibo Keita, everybody has been talking about. For how long shall we keep talking about challenges? Today, May the 27th, and tomorrow, May the 28th, Oxford Africa Society is opening a new chapter in the conduct of conferences. This is a conference that focuses on how we want to be innovative, on how we can use our minds, our ideas, to kickstart our speedy development as a continent. Now let the theories lie. Now let the books in the libraries, on the shelves, in all libraries, let them all lie. Let us now reach out for our practical ideas. This is where we start. Very soon, many others will be following us, but by then, we would have gotten far. The conference this year is aiming at focusing on ecosystems and startups in Africa and how we can push the agenda from here. Thank you very much, everybody, for making time to join us. We are looking forward to an exciting conference, a conference where you have the fantastic speakers giving us all the ideas we need to focus on ecosystems and startups. This is a conference that has put together the finest minds on the continent and outside the continent. You are here not to listen to the usual talks, the usual ramblings, the usual ranting from others that have been done all over the years. You are here to know and understand how you can start a business, how you can deal with your startup, the challenges and the great things you can rake from them. You are here to speak to those who have done it before. You are here to listen to those who are still doing it. You are here to tap into the minds of those who are ready to take us to the next level. You are here to listen to people who are establishing the greatest tech, the greatest education startups, the greatest economic and business startups that would soon overtake the likes of Google, Amazon, Facebook, etc. Others have started from here before. This is the land of Oxford. We can also start from here, and we are starting from here. Our determination will be stopped if we fail to take advantage of this conference and make the most out of it. And therefore, I urge you that as the Oxford Africa Conference kicks off today, every single minute matters. Every second counts, because you miss any second at your own peril. You miss a minute and you know that you have missed a great idea. You've missed the chance to have an interaction with those that matter in the ecosystems sector and the startup sector. Ladies and gentlemen, this conference has been put together, but by an extremely diligent committee who, if I fail to say thanks to, I'll be the most ungrateful person. And therefore, help me say thank you to all the conference committee members. If they are here, they can stand up and receive a hand of applause from all of you. Again, allow me to express my unfailing records, to record my unfailing gratitude to my fellow executive committee members who have braved night and day, sunshine and rain, and everything to help put together this conference. My team, I'm really grateful. If you are here, please get up for a round of applause. I know the Oxford Africa Initiative wouldn't like to be thanked so much because they are always there for us. So saying a thanks to them has almost become like a cliche. But again, it doesn't hurt to say thank you. For all you have done for us, we can only be grateful. Allow me to also express my gratitude to the Vice Chancellor, her office, and all her team for supporting us in the past 10 years since the Oxford Africa Society Conference has been running. They have again come through for us this year, and we are always grateful. As ever, you attendees and all of you who have done everything possible to make sure this conference is a success, we are eternally grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, do not allow me to continue boring you with long speeches, because I am not here to be any useful speaker. Rather, I am only here to tell you that the most exciting, the largest conference across the world, the most looked forward to conference has started. And here is Fikayo to give you a rundown of what the conference is about, the background, the aims and objectives of this year's conference, and the next line of activities from tonight to the end of tomorrow. Sit back, relax, take advantage of every second, interact with a speaker, interact with an attendee, because you have the finance mind here. From me, it is a warm welcome and a good evening. Thank you.
Well, I'm not as eloquent as Amati, so I will not even try anything. Hi, everyone. My name is Fikayo, Program Director for this year's Oxford Africa Conference. Our theme for this year is scaling the African startup ecosystem. And I think we've selected speakers that can effectively speak to that. So this is I guess a 1.5 day or 2 day, depending on your conception of time, event. Today, we have 2 panels. We have 1 keynote speaker and two panels where we'll be discussing a lot of what founders are doing, a lot of what venture capital and other established firms in the sector are currently doing. And then tomorrow, we'll also have more panels. We'll have a series of workshops. We'll have more keynote speeches. If you've gotten tickets for today, I believe they also work for tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So, you could be part of both days if you're in Oxford. If you're not, we can find a Zoom link or a YouTube link, or, technology is doing amazing things. And that's part of what we'll discuss over these coming days. But like as Amati said, I think for us, the vision behind this conference is not just to come and talk about everything that is not working in Africa. The goal of this conference is to actually talk about what is working, right? I've had the pleasure of working at African startups, at various Nigerian startups, and it's been wonderful. And I think it's time that we highlight and spotlight these happenings. And the goal of the next 2 days is to talk about what people are doing in the space, how these things are working, and I guess ways that we can push these forward. So it's practical and pragmatic solutions that we're looking at today. So to kick us off today, I think we have our first panel. If I can find my agenda, we have our first panel where we're effectively talking to a series of founders about a lot of the work they're doing, some of the issues that they're facing. They're spotlighting some of the things that other people can learn from them, and everything in that sort of sphere. So what I would just ask is, for those who are online, if you have any questions, I will ask that you please use the Q&A section. Please don't use the chat section. I beg you, I'm not monitoring that. So please, people, use the Q&A section. For those who are here, you can just raise your hand, and I guess we can just call on you to ask your questions to the panelists. But that's how we will run through today. Yeah, I think we can start off with our first panel. If we could just, I guess I'll just come sit down. I don't know if you guys can still see me. I'm sorry. You would think I'd be good at technology, but it turns out I'm not. Sorry, can the panelists see me?
Yep.
Oh, okay, cool.
Until you started moving.
Oh, it's gone now. So can you actually see me right now, or should I go back to where I was?
Go back to where you were.
Okay, thank you. Abdel is a dear friend of mine, by the way. All right.
We went to school together, so.
we were both in China just as the pandemic was starting. If you can imagine what that is like, but that is pretty much Abdel and I's story. We were the early discoverers of the COVID-19 pandemic. All right, cool. So we have our first panel starting. I think each of the panelists, you guys, those of you in the audience, I believe you should be able to see panelists. Those of you online as well, you should be able to see them. Please, again, if you're online, please use the Q&A section to ask your questions. But yeah, we will kick off with the first panel for today. I'm just gonna wait. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I've lost track of the event. We're supposed to start with the keynote. I'm so sorry. Can we please start? Dimeji, please don't laugh at me. Okay, cool. I'm so sorry, guys. The excitement of the day has gotten the best of me. We're supposed to start with a keynote address. I believe Educatey was actually on the screen before, and now she's gone. Thank you. All right. You should be able to unmute yourself. I'm sorry I tried to kick you off the agenda.
No worries at all. Thank you. Can you all hear me, see me perfectly? Awesome. So I know how, super excited everyone is for the panel. So I will try to keep my keynote as short and sweet and concise as possible so you guys can get to the meat of this event. So hello, everyone. I mean, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thanks Ifelua, Fikayo, Tolu, the whole Africa organizing team for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to the next 2 days of activities. My name is Onajite Emero. I'm from Nigeria, born and raised. I spent just under 9 years living and studying in the UK before moving back home to start my career, and career is ultimately what has brought me back. So I now live and work in London with my family. Unfortunately, I wish I could have been there in person, but the virtual world is what we're all used to now. So I've worked in the startup ecosystem for nearly a decade now, starting from empowering resilient entrepreneurs across the African continent, such as farmers, tailors, fashion designers, etc., to now working with some of the most promising tech startups spanning various verticals. I've been at Google for over 4 years now, and I currently lead our startup developer ecosystem team in Europe. On Monday, we're actually launching our first Google Cloud Focus Accelerator program, where we're supporting more than 10 amazing tech companies from across Europe and Israel to build and scale their products with Google Cloud. My previous tenure, not quite long ago, just moved in December. So my previous tenure was actually as head of operations for Google for Africa Accelerator in Africa, Google for Startups Accelerator in Africa, and then as head of our startup developer ecosystem for Africa. So our goal in the startup developer ecosystem team at Google is really to support startups globally with Google's best practices, products, and people, essentially what we like to call the best of Google. And through direct engagements, i.e. through our accelerator programs, as well as indirectly through our partners, VC communities, and more. And in the span of the last 4 years, I've launched our Google Developer Space in Lagos, which tragically closed due to COVID. I led 6 accelerator cohorts and created a Black Founders Fund for African startups, providing over $6 million in total equity-free support to over 100 companies who've gone on to raise over $150 million and create over 5,000 jobs. And this includes one of our portfolio companies who is now actually an African unicorn, and one recent $200 million+ acquisition. I also led the Women Tech Makers program in Africa. So it's an initiative by Google to bridge the notorious industry gender divide and promote women, giving them access to knowledge, skills, and community in order to help them thrive in tech. And working with over 130 ambassadors from across 30 countries in Africa. So prior to Google, I was one of the Pioneer Program team members, so the program manager at Tony Lumulu Foundation, which is an established entrepreneurship program. Over 4 years, I supported 4,000 pre-seed entrepreneurs, or should I say SMEs, with $20 million in seed funding. And that has now grown to the largest digital networking platform across of African entrepreneurs across the continent, in the world, I would say. So today I'm really excited to be speaking to you all and just sharing some of my experience and hopefully a thing or two that's true and hopefully new as well. Over the years, I've seen the growth of the landscape, startups versus SME versus MSMEs across Africa. And today, I just hope to share a few insights I've learned along the way and thoughts about the future of African entrepreneurship and the African tech space. So in the startup space, I've noted, the similarities and differences as well between the African landscape and the European startup landscape. And I've concluded simply that business is business, regardless of where it's being done. And while the context is Africa and the challenges are peculiar to her, we find that technologies that startups are building are truly globally competitive. The saying that some of you might know, if you can drive in Lagos, in Nigeria, you can drive anywhere, can also be translated to be used in the startup context. If you can build for Africa, you can literally build anywhere. And I just, one point I would love to stress is that Africa is not the final frontier for African tech, and I'll come back to that later. So over the last 6 years in the African startup and tech ecosystem, we've experienced phenomenal growth. African startups have gained more international traction and recognition, expanding their businesses across borders in the continent and beyond. And the 2021 funding landscape in Africa alone is proof that there's so much substance to the startups. Almost $5 billion in investments were made to African startups, with the majority going to fintech, edtech, and logistics. And while that is still less than 0.5% of global funding raised, that is 12 times more than in 2016, just barely 6 years ago. We even have 7 unicorns, companies that are valued at over $1 billion across the continent. Now, so I think there are 2 major reasons for the investors' growing confidence in the region, which is leading to these funding numbers, and these are market expansion and technology. We say market expansion because startups in Africa are aggressively targeting the underserved market. So the more widely recognized is fintech companies who are expanding financial services beyond brick and mortar banks. They're building for financial inclusion by looking after the grassroots, the unbanked, homeless, youth, women, and more. And they're creating solutions to what is a lack of interconnectivity, which has held back our dream of a one Africa economy for decades. So these companies are providing credit scoring mechanisms. They're providing peer-to-peer lending and other tools to help people improve their quality of life secure financial systems as well. And very, very importantly, these companies are also helping people make wise decisions about how to secure and grow their future wealth, harnessing the potential of savings platforms and unlocking the international market, allowing communities that have mostly only ever been consumers to now be enriched by the wealth of companies that they helped make successful all across the world. And I wouldn't name any of those. I think I work at some of those. But we talk about scaling technology because honestly, Africa's tech is comparable and competitive on a global scale. And the truth is, Africa has not even begun to realize the potential. And I know this may sound cliche, but we've barely even seen the tip of the iceberg when it comes to potential solutions to the myriad of challenges. I know we're not talking about challenges, but there are challenges, and there are a myriad of challenges on the continent. We haven't even scratched the surface. And these challenges are often so complex and so far-reaching and so deeply rooted that it will take not one, not two, not even 3 attempts, or different types of startups, or countries, or regional focused companies to address them. And so with these types of problems, you can unlock solutions that are deeply tech-driven and internationally relevant because Africa in itself is not a monolith. An example is a company that was built initially to solve for the lack of African genetic data within the medical research and development field. So to enable deeper and more relevant medical breakthroughs that are tailored specifically for African and Black people. And this company is starting in Africa, or they've started in Africa, but they're already creating a blueprint for what will become a globally relevant and necessary solution. I mean, if you think about it, who is building specifically for the health of indigenous people in North America, in Asia, in the Pacific, for example? And now, according to Time, approximately 830 women die every day from preventable causes related to pregnancy and childbirth. 99% of them are in developing countries due to lack of education, poor healthcare, all sorts of things. But there are strong African startups that are solving for maternal health and building community around it, particularly for rural populations. So beyond the scalability of the tech itself is also the talent. The same African developers that are building for Africa are migrating and building at the same level in other countries. And I know Nigerians here will say that, Japa is the buzzword for the year. Everybody is moving out. The tech community is no different. And now COVID has completely unlocked the notion of, remote work as we used to know it. And it's removed all the barriers to entry for roles and jobs that were previously beyond accessibility for the average person. Last year, Google released a report. We released a report in partnership with the IFC, which estimated about 700,000 developers across Africa, with approximately 50% concentrated in Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Morocco, and Egypt alone. Now, Africa is in a position where talent is rising. Whether it's fast enough remains to be seen, but it's rising and is being exported globally. Youth unemployment can definitely be solved in the long term by investing even more in technical education and training, investing in the future economy, not just the economy that exists today. And the potential to grow tech talent on the continent definitely exists. So there are training services across the continent. For example, we have the Google Africa Developer Scholarship, which is set to train 30,000 more developers this year across the continent. There's also Decagon, Semicolon is in Lagos in Nigeria, Moringa School in Nairobi, and professional placement service Gebeya in Addis Ababa. They've all seen huge growth and huge demand for their services in the past few years. So just to deviate a little bit, when talking about the potential for scalability in Africa's startup and tech ecosystem. It's not without its challenges, and I probably don't need to list them, right? I don't need to list them all. We're all very much aware. But while everyone really, really emphasizes the need to bridge the funding gaps, there's also the need for cross-border collaboration and vertical integration as well. So integration across all the industries. And I said earlier, just to reiterate, Africa is not a monolith. If you've ever heard someone mention that they're going to, or they've just come from visiting Africa and you've mentally sighed and rolled your eyes, then you know exactly what I mean by this. Africa is not a one-track place. Yet, while that is true, we also have to recognize the dangers, or should I say, the missed opportunities that come with building in silos. So one of the biggest advantages Africa has lies in its numbers, right? Close to 1.5 billion people living on the continent, not to mention the diaspora, which the World Bank has estimated at over 150 million globally. And one of the hardest challenges to crack lies in the disparities between the regions, the countries, the cultures, and obviously government policy as well. Culture, because while we may face very similar challenges, the approaches must be tailored to an extent, which is very hard to do 54 times over. And then policy, because it's a given factor for success or the opposite. So I've spoken broadly so far, but now specifically to Google's approach to supporting startups. So as I mentioned earlier, I led the Black Founders Fund, as well as our accelerator programs across Africa. And now I'm doing so in Europe. But beyond technical training, access to mentorship and funding, and Google's tools, we believe very, very strongly about promoting collaboration. So our global and regional startup alumni networks are built to foster continuous engagement between startups, which is really critical, especially as they scale and grow. We also position our startups for investment and international opportunities. So in 2019, before COVID came and spoiled everything and spoiled the notion of in-person events for us, we led an immersive experience for African startups and UK-based investors. We literally brought 20 companies from across Africa and 10 investors from across Europe together for a week in Lagos, and then followed by a week in London, and really immerse them into each other's ecosystems to really understand how best to thrive in both places. As a result of the startup investor connections, we've seen some of the startups that participated raise follow-on funding from these same investors, or from secondary introductions from these investors. VCs and investors are instrumental. They play an instrumental role in the ecosystem, not just in Africa, but globally. Their influence superseded merely writing a check, but even shaping narratives, right? Across Europe, across North America, we're seeing trends of VCs pouring in more and more capital into companies that are building in specific ways and bringing along the trend for everyone else to follow suit. So we're seeing companies building for social and environmental welfare, with particular interest in companies solving for the Sustainable Development Goals. We're also seeing an upward trend of funding for deep tech. So talking about advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning, robotics, biotechnology, and the likes. So if any of you are thinking of starting a tech company soon, don't quote me, but green tech. So while the landscape is different, and earlier we're already seeing companies in this space in Africa. I mentioned genetic mapping, but largely African startups have almost no choice but to create SDG related solutions, given the socio-economic landscape. And all of them, or most of them, are ripe for investment. I'm sure everyone, or at least most of you in the audience, have seen YC's notes to their pool of startups. And the world is about to experience an economic downturn, expecting the worst for startups, but it seems that we've very quickly forgotten how similar the sentiment was that was expressed in March 2020 at the very start of the COVID pandemic. And notwithstanding the pandemic itself, we've seen startups build, we've seen startups pivot, we've seen startups remain resilient. And in 2021, we saw a 2.5 times growth in VC funding into the continent. So yes, we've had a bullish decade, so what is 12 to 24 bearish run, right? What is 12 to 24 months of a bearish run in the grand scheme of things? So we'll see investment flow into the African startups. It's not a game of benevolence, right? As a startup, just keep building, pivot if you have to, and just be aware of the changes in investor sentiment and adapt with that. So I know I think I just have a few minutes left. So just to conclude, I want to talk, bring us to today, right? Talk about us today in Europe, in the UK, and the role of Europe in Africa's success. So Europe has always been a frontier for African business, and tech startups are no different. We have a shared history, whether it's positive or otherwise, and as well as proximity. Those are some of the fundamental pull factors. Beyond that, we can also talk about, the ease of doing business, etc. Yesterday, I had the privilege of hearing the UK Minister for Tech and Innovation, Chris Phillip. He spoke at our Google for Startups Tech Nation Decade of UK Tech event, and he shared about his work and plans to create pathways for tech startups to thrive and build their teams from across the world. And that's just one example of many across the region to pull not only businesses, but talent globally. And so it's no wonder we see a trend of African tech companies and talent establishing abroad, more so in the past 5 years than ever before. And I dare say that the days of companies moving to Africa to extract and gain from Africa's consumerist first approach have been well and truly overturned now by the trend of homegrown tech companies moving from Africa to Europe, to North America and beyond, to extract funding, to deepen their networks, to serve the diaspora and global community, and bring value back home. So part of the report that we stated that the internet economy will contribute $180 billion to Africa by 2025, and over 700 billion by 2050. So clearly we are in an unprecedented position to create enormous value and impact with Africans building for the world. So just some of my key points to note for the African tech startup landscape are: 1, funding. So the Google for Startups Black Founders Fund was created simply because there still isn't enough funding going towards African-led startup companies. Perhaps this is because not enough funders appreciate the intricacies. Perhaps, there are not enough funders who deeply understand the nuances of African business, or they're just not bold enough to invest for a future that is highly optimistic, but needs a lot of sleeve rolling, rolling up the sleeves to achieve. And simply put, perhaps we need more Africans as funders. It's easy to sit in these conferences and, make assumptions about Africa based on keynotes like this, or based on media representation, but it's completely different when you visit multiple African countries and immerse yourself in the varying markets. So I challenge VCs to do that and then decide. I believe you'd be more inclined to invest after you've actually experienced it. Number 2 is to solve complex problems in very simple ways. So this goes to people that are thinking of starting companies themselves. And this is something that we always say to founders. I always say to founders in our programs. There are so many great startups just waiting to be founded. There are so many challenges. I'm sorry, I keep using the word challenges, but there are so many challenges to pick and choose from. And there's so much room for impact to be made. The key really is to identify a challenge that is truly complex and fundamental to so many people. but find the simplest way to solve it. That kind of solution will always be scalable. The most urgent problems in Africa won't be solved urgently. They're not going to be solved today. They're not going to be solved this year or next year or the year after. But a result of what you as startups are building, whether it's successful or not, the learnings will lead to those problems eventually being solved. And the last thing is social and economic justice is key to social and economic growth. So we cannot leave solving African challenges to just one gender. Please, please, let's fix the pipeline. Let's empower young girls so that we have more brilliant minds to build solutions. 50% of the continent, 50% of the world's population needs to bring 50% of the solutions. So I'll just leave you with this last statement. Africa is neither a monolith, nor is Africa the final frontier for African startups. The task to build an Africa that works for everyone should be intentional and requires us all. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for having me. I've had, this has been an absolute pleasure. So thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Educatey. And thank you for being so kind about me trying to evict you from the agenda in the middle of the event. All right, cool. So we can move on to the panels. And I think Educatey really sort of defined what we're going to be discussing, that look, Africa is not a monolith. People are experiencing different things across the continent, but there's so much opportunity and there are many challenges. And so we will be moving into our first panel to talk about some of these opportunities, these challenges, across the board. Can everyone see the panelists? Do we have everyone? Okay, we have Abdul. All right, cool. All right, great. Again, members of the audience, please, because I'm seeing questions in the chat, please put your stuff in the Q&A so we can actually get the founders and anybody else to speak on your questions or your comments. But yeah, so we will kick off. I think it might be easier if I go in order of how you guys are on the screen. And if you could just briefly introduce yourselves. And then, so by the way, we're going in order of how you're on my screen, maybe not on your screen, but we'll just go around. So I have Peter, I have Dimeji, I have Abdel, and then I have Damlola. So we'll just have you guys go around and just, introduce yourselves, introduce the work you're doing, the companies you're working with, and then I guess we'll dive into the panel. So Peter, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much. My name is Peter Jonzo. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Trigger Foods. Before Trigger Foods, I was with the Coca-Cola company. I worked there for 21 years. I was CEO for the business in East Africa. I lived in Lagos for 3 years. I was president for Western Central Africa and started Trigger Foods 8 years ago. I've been CEO for the last 3 years. And we pride ourselves to building the back office for informal retail across the continent. Today, we are a B2B e-commerce business. We serve about 50,000 customers a day. I employ about 1,000 people. And in terms of the products that we ship close to 1 million kilograms of produce every day to assorted retailers across Kenya and from next week across Uganda. So really excited to be here to share a little bit more about the company, what we do and our vision for the continent.
Thank you, Peter. Dimeji, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Dimeji. I'm one of the co-founders of Helium Health, and I'm also the CFO at Helium Health. So for us, we started Helium Health with a clear goal to use technology and data to transform healthcare delivery across Africa and the emerging markets. And we've been doing this for about 5 to 6 years now. And I'm excited to share more with you guys for the rest of the panel.
Right, cool. Thank you, Dimeji. We have Islam back. Abdul, do you want to go? Just so we stick to that order. So we'll still stick with Abdul and Damilola, and then we'll go around.
Let's go. Let's go. So besides being Fikayo's classmate back in the day at Schwartzman, I am the co-founder of Educatey. Educatey is a SaaS-enabled marketplace that aspires to build for education what LinkedIn built for jobs. So think of it as very simply as that one-stop shop that any student anywhere in the world can go to and be able to apply to bachelor's, master's, PhD programs, compare them, and be able to ship out on either paid programs or scholarships, basically anywhere in the world. So far, we've been focused on the Middle East and African students. That's kind of like our take and pride. And we have managed in 17 months to be able to reach out to more than 208,000 students from our beloved region. So hopefully we can be able to engage today in productive conversations around scaling the African startup ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Abdul. Damilola, the mic is yours, and then we'll have Islam.
All right. My name is Damilola Lokeshusi, but you can just call me Dami. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Shotlers. We are building the future of transportation in Africa. What you have right now is either affordable and not comfortable or not safe, or you have something that's, expensive but comfortable. But we've decided to create a system where people, the everyday man, can afford clean, safe, and reliable transportation through our platform Shotlers. So happy to be here.
I'm very happy you are here. I've used Shotlers before. I've actually used it. So yes, I'm very happy to be here too. Islam, the mic is yours.
Yes, so thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to be with you, the fellow panelists. My name is Islam Shawi. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Paymo. So at Paymo, we build payment infrastructure to allow businesses accept digital transactions and give them better access to financial services. So we've been in business for almost more than 5 years now. We serve more than 100,000 businesses, and we power transactions of more than 12 million people in Egypt. We just expanded to Pakistan, and hopefully within the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to expand across the region.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay, cool. So I guess we'll just dive into questions. I think the first thing I'll just talk about is the fact that all of these founders here today have actually raised tons of money, but I feel like nobody actually mentioned that in their intro. And I feel like if I was a startup founder, I would start with that and be like, do you know how much I've raised? Google me. But I guess I would start with a money question and actually ask the question, like, in your general sort of day-to-day running, like running your business on a day-to-day basis, what is that one expenditure that you would look at and be like, either I would want to take this away or I would want to optimize for this? I'm going to start with Dami because I just want to.
I mean, I just shouted payroll here, like payroll. Top of that list is engineers. Yeah. Engineers, payroll engineers, then infrastructure.
Fair enough. I feel like every founder would say this. It's like, we need to optimize payroll and engineering. Dimeji, Abdul, Islam, anything you guys want to add? Also, by the way, I just want you guys to know that there's laughter coming from the audience. So Dami, you guys are making jokes. So that's wonderful.
I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, top of the line is always payroll. Like, I don't think anyone would see like the expenses and payroll wouldn't be at the top of the list, right? So, I mean, it's great, but once it gets to the end of the month, you're like, but yeah, I mean, if anyone can let me know how to optimize and bring it down, then, I'll be happy to hear, but I don't think that's feasible. So, yeah.
I want it on the record that the Nigerian founders are the ones complaining about payroll. I just want that on the record.
No. I mean, if I could add, definitely, because I think everything that we're building is mostly, IP. So it will definitely be, be payroll as my fellow panelists. So, I mean, for us, it's payroll and marketing expenses. That's like the most we pay for. Actually, we had a challenge because we're a payments company, so we had a hardware component in the card reader or the POS. However, along the last 2 years, we've been working with a number of companies like MasterCard in order to do an initiative called the Soft POS, where we start enabling micro merchants with an app that turns a smartphone into a POS in order to actually optimize or actually eliminate this hardware component. But again, I 100% agree. And definitely with the huge fundraisers that has been happening in the past 2 years, and I'm sure you've all feeling this, there is a lot of competition on talents. That's why you can see a lot of salaries have been driven up significantly over the course of the last couple of years. Some people definitely well deserved. Others, it's more about just competition and people trying to overbid for talents. Again, other than this, COVID and remote work has definitely increased salaries, because you're not only competing with companies within your territory. You can, like, a guy can take an offer from Google or Facebook and they're just like working on their couch in Lagos or in Cairo, for example. So this is definitely something that put a lot of pressure on our payroll and expenses.
Yeah, cool. Peter, Abdel, anything to add?
I think, like from my perspective, when you look at the top line, like tech infrastructure is key even for software companies. Like even if we don't have a hardware component, like what Islam was mentioning, like God bless his soul, of course, like I can imagine how fast they're running out through cash, but I know he's also like a symbol of great founders is how they're capable of managing their cash flow. And I know that Islam is definitely one of those. But even for software companies, like as a SaaS company, like the price of tech infrastructure of all shapes and forms, so think like servers, think of like digital tools, etc., is just becoming absurd. So a lot of times you're trying to mitigate that by resorting to building a lot of in-house infrastructure as much as you can, which leads to another hike in the price of your engineering components. So it's kind of like you're trying to juggle, and then whenever you're juggling, you're still seeing that really showing up on your top line. I think that's point number one. I think point number two is with the current macroeconomical environment and the trickle-down effect that's happening from the trickle-down market effect that's happening from public markets into private markets that we're currently seeing, a lot of founders are currently forced into, as much as possible, trying to extend their runways. So regardless of, that's why you won't hear us talking about how much money we've fundraised, right? Because it doesn't matter. If you're not cash flow positive, if you're not seen on your unit economics, like all of us, with all due respect to how amazing we are as co-founders, will probably be staying home after the next 12 or 24 months. So you need to be very sane. So a lot of your top line now is going into mitigation strategies that are related to being able to extend your cash flow as much as possible. And instead of just focusing on growth at all expenses, there's starting to be a shift in narrative where you're allocating parts of your top line into bringing more sanity into your economics. So I think that would be my 2 cents on it.
Thank you so much. I just want to build on what Abdel said. So I look at there being 2 categories of spend on our P&L. What I call working operating expenses or front-facing operating expenses, and admin. So for the front-facing operating expenses, I think every startup on the continent has a dual role. One is to build intellectual property that makes you competitive. And in some instances, you need to create your own environment to support your business. Because sometimes what you find is that sometimes the ecosystem might not be very supportive to everything that you're trying to do. So what is it that you need to invest in to ensure that your business can thrive? So that's the first bucket of expenses. The rest is all the expenses that go to supporting your working operating expenses. These are all your admin and everything else that that you need to look out for. And one of the things I ask myself is there a more efficient way to spend that non-working operating expenses? And I'm always asking myself those questions and ensuring that, one, I still remain on top of my game in terms of building the IP that I need to build, because that's what guarantees our tomorrow. And two, ensuring that you're able to survive tomorrow. You can build the IP, but if something happens in the regulatory environment that just changes overnight, that wipes you out, then you also need to get on top of that. And then, of course, everything that happens outside of that.
And no, I think that's definitely that's definitely very insightful. I guess for those in the audience, please feel free to ask questions through the Q&A box. But the other question I guess we had lined up for our panelists is, and this is, I think Onoche mentioned this around the YC letter, because I actually read the letter that YC sent to all the companies that they work with, and it was a very interesting note. It just made me realize I cannot be a founder, because if I saw that, I would just go home. But I guess my question then is, in terms of like in the next 5, 6, 10 years, where do you see your business going? Like, what is your ideal sort of dream scenario for your business in the next, let's just go with 5 years, just in case there's another pandemic. Let's just go with 5 years. I guess we could start with Islam and then just work our way around.
So definitely, as Abdurrahman was saying, we now live in a very in a very challenging times when it comes to fundraising and investment. Definitely, we have been living in a world where money was extremely abundant and fundraising was super easy over the last years. We just like had the longest bull cycle ever in like the longest one in history. So I think things are now coming to more reasonable way. I think companies, the way I see it is the companies that have been like in buying the revenue or have been like selling $1 for 70 cents, because a lot of companies like their GMV was growing and their top line was growing, but because they're buying revenue. So I mean, if you're selling $1 for 70 cents, you're selling an awful amount of dollars. So I think this type of businesses, I think they're not going to sustain over the course of the next couple of years. I believe businesses with good foundations, businesses with real need that are solving real needs are the ones who are going to flourish. Definitely, it's not going to be easy. A lot of founders and companies needs to, as Abdurrahman was saying, needs to mitigate what's happening and trying to reverse course into a balance between gross profit and unit economics and growth. However, the way we at PayMob, I mean, we've been always unit economic positive. Actually, we were profitable for 2 years back then before we started our scaling. So I mean, we're trying to build. Right now, we're not profitable, but we're trying to build a scalable company. We're trying, as my fellow Educatey was talking. I mean, we're trying to build for the world, not only for Africa. So we're trying to expand. The way we see the future is that we want to grow our network of merchants, especially SMEs, and try to help this movement of independent merchants, of people who are building businesses, especially on the side, in order to improve their income. Because this is a trend we've all seen all over the world, especially here. So we're trying to empower those with payment solutions and financial services. We're trying to expand geographically in order to tell the world that, I mean, we can build for the world. It's not only like an Africa only or an Egypt only problem. This is a problem in emerging markets and cash intensive markets that we're trying to solve. And investments that we got from global players and global VCs is just a testament about the market and about the talent and about that here in Africa, there are people who can create IP that can be transferred and can be exported. We're not only people who consume tech, we can build tech and we can export this tech. So this is something we're super excited about, and very excited about what the future holds for us and for the continent.
Thank you for that as well. Anyone want to volunteer as tribute?
So I just wanted to just add on to that. I think for the last 13 years, because I think that's when how long this whole wave of maybe what I'd call investor exuberance has lasted. People build businesses for their investors. And I think the key thing is that we'll need to make a transition where we actually build our businesses to solve real issues that our customers face. And making that transition in some instances will be painful for some companies. In some companies, maybe they were true to their core or to their vision or to their purpose of being. And one of the big things that I wanted to highlight that I have faced in my life as an entrepreneur is a whole conversation around asset light versus asset heavy. And what you find is that there's a lot of investors who are coming from markets that have infrastructure surplus. So if you go to the US, they have lots of warehouses, lots of infrastructure. You can build a very asset light model. Now, if you're having a conversation with that investor, then you end up building a business that is asset light, which has no possibility of ever realizing profitability in the long term. Because as I mentioned in the beginning, you're trying to build intellectual property, but also you're creating an ecosystem that will help your business thrive. And in some instances, we're building non-traditional infrastructure in Africa to support our businesses because of the type of problems that we're solving and the type of infrastructure that we have in our markets. And I think the key thing is that, this should be more or less an opportunity for us to really think through in terms of who are our customers, what problems are we solving for our customers, and what infrastructure do I need to build to ensure that my customers can get the value that they need to get. We're in e-commerce, and sometimes, folks come and say, hey, by the way, you need to have a more asset-light business. One thing that people don't realize is that Amazon spends about 25 to 30% of their free cash flow in assets. This is just building hardcore distribution centers or building that type of infrastructure. Or when Facebook is spending 35% of their cash flow laying out fiber optics across the US, is that asset light? And I think the key thing is that, it is important for us to then go back to what are we trying to do and what problem are we solving for our customers?
Thank you so much, Peter. Yeah, you guys are getting like thumbs up and applause from the audience, so that's good. Dami, Abdul, do you guys want to add anything else on this?
Yeah, I'll just, just to buttress what the others have also said. Before we raised last year, we were profitable and we were bootstrapping. We had not raised any venture, even through angel investors. We just got like a few grants here and there, and we're profitable, right? And so the next 5 years, right now we're not profitable because we've got external funding to pump that growth and to scale up. I see a world where I don't need to raise funds after my next raise. Like I don't want to continuously begin to tell people the reasons why they need to give me money, every single year, every 12 months. Like, I don't know how some guys do it in 6 months. Kudos, you guys are the real MVPs. But yeah, I enjoy building businesses. I'm talking to customers, I'm talking to investors, really. And that's where, that's the reason why we're able to survive the years. We've been in business for over 5 to 6 years without external funding, because our focus was on customers, on getting, those contracts, just paying customers, and, and just really solving the problem, because we're in a very difficult, space. Also buttressing the point of infrastructure. These investors are the VCs from developed countries are in a country where everything really, most of the things there work. Transportation, for example, the roads are solid, the roads are good, there's public transportation. So coming to Nigeria and saying, we are creating our own infrastructure, like we are asset light, but we literally have to create our own form of clean buses, right? So that might be a difficult conversation to always have with people that might not really understand the problems that we're trying to solve here. So I see a world where, we're able to reach a source, even with trying to pump or grow, where we are able to reach profitability and we're able to sustain our growth and we're able to invest in our own expansion without necessarily surviving on investments. That's what I see.
Yeah, and I think I would definitely echo that as well. I think the goal at this point is to, is to be at the point where you're sort of on autopilot and, you put structures in place that, regardless of how the market goes, whether they're good or bad, those structures can take you through, tough times and great times, and for us, I would say, so in the next 5 years, our goal is always to be the backbone of healthcare delivery, across for all healthcare stakeholders. So for the providers, providing software to them to run digitally. So, trying to just reduce the inefficiency of healthcare delivery from, through technology. But a lot of these hospitals have historically been run on paper, so we're trying to automate all of that process. And also, we're trying to bridge the funding gap as well. So with our new product, which is Helium Credit, we're trying to get hospitals to, get financing so they can scale further, accelerate the growth, get more working capital. If they need new locations, they can draw on that. So for us, in the next 5 years, we want to, be that backbone for all healthcare delivery across Africa and the emerging markets. And long term, even further than that, is then to leverage on the data that, we would have to, then further help like the government and pharmaceutical companies to make more informed decisions based on the data. So I would say that's the long-term goal for us.
From my side, last but not least, it's really inspiring, to hear other entrepreneur stories. It's always throws in some fresh blood and makes you feel like, there are a lot of people out there that are trying to build something that can leave a positive footprint and have a positive impact. For us at Educatey, when I look at our longer term vision, I think it's a little bit detached from financials and more attached to the mission. And from our perspective, if I look at what I would like to see 5 to 6 years from now, is I'd like to see a widely engaged user base of young people that are all capable of facilitating that question of where and what to study simply through that exact same place via Educatey. I want to see happy customers on the other side that are raving about us, good NPSs and referring us. I want to see a lot of organic traction, and I want to see a company that's capable of withstanding whatever it is that's happening globally, if you say like a pandemic, a war, etc., because of its solid roots and it having a vision and a mission that align in value or is creating value to a lot of young people and a lot of customers out there. That's what I would like to see.
That's amazing. I think we've opened a can of worms about funding, because there's a few questions from the audience about funding. So what I'll just do is we'll take one question from the audience that's online. And then if anyone in the room would like to ask a question, you can come up after that. But there's a question here from Christabel Ngwashi. Please forgive my pronunciation. The question is, will you agree that sometimes investments from VCs and other funders stifles the growth of startups? Or is this funding always good? If it is, why is it that some startups wrap up after a huge amount of funding? I don't know who wants to start with that one.
I can take that one. Okay, so funding is not always good. So let's just agree on that as a bottom line. If I could build a business, scale it and grow it, and then later on exit it or keep it or IPO it without seeking any funding, I'll do that. Believe me, if you ask any founder, they'll tell you that, because you're selling your own baby. Yeah, you're selling parts of it. So you don't wanna do that. So let's just agree first to that prompt. The second prompt is, I do see that a lot of times with founders, where they think first about where am I going to fundraise from, how much money am I going to fundraise, and building a financial model before even having a product, before even offering anything that is of value, before even getting validation on the hypothesis that they have that they're creating something that is worth something for a specific customer segment. So I think if I would answer your question, like, or the two folds of your question, so first thing, will I agree that sometimes investment and VC funds stifles growth of startups? I don't think it stifles. I think it kind of, at points in time, it dictates. So it kind of like, you start navigating growth in a specific way in terms of metrics and in terms of milestones that you agree upon with your investors. So is it always good? That's according to your situation. But it's not always good, especially if you're not bringing in what founders and entrepreneurs refer to as smart money, which is investors that are coming in that believe in your mission, or they are mission driven and are willing to come along the journey with you of creating a specific value. If you don't do that and you're because just like Islam was saying, back in the day, cash was cheap, like cash was abundant and cash was cheap. In a time when cash was cheap, a lot of people were giving out checks and giving out money, but it wasn't all smart money. Some founders that I know hated the day that they signed a check or they took a signed check from an investor, and others love their investors. So answering then the second segment of your question, why do some startups have a rap after a huge amount of funding, is because they didn't have strong fundamentals. Like if you look at a lot of founders that are here in the room, like Damilola or like Peter or Dimitri or like Islam, they probably invested a specific amount of time to get their fundamentals right before seeking out for funding. Like, I'm not just going to go to VC or get venture money while I don't even have any initial validation on my product market hypothesis. In our case, for example, it took us 1.5 years before seeking even our first funding of like customer interviews, market intelligence, validation of different hypotheses, experiments, etc. And then once you had a specific amount, not traction, but at least validation, then you have strong fundamentals and you have a clear economic model that can be able to ensure that your startup grows once you receive funding. And I think that kind of like answers your third part of the question also. I think Islam has his hand.
Yeah, Islam's hand went up quick.
Well, I agree with Abdurrahman. Unfortunately, I mean, throughout like past couple of years, I mean, someone can raise like a $5 million check or a $7 million check just with having a presentation without even have any traction, without even setting the company. The problem, as Abdurrahman was saying, is that if you didn't take the time just to fix your problems, you just throw money at problems. That's why a lot of companies that raise super early, because they have a lot of money, they don't care about optimization, they don't care about building fundamentals, because they have a lot of cash, so there is no time for optimization. So that's why most of those companies fail, because when things get bigger, I mean, problems become much bigger than you can just throw money at them. So I mean, we raised $350,000 USD. We stayed 3 years. We didn't raise any outside capital until we built the platform, got the license, and just reached this product market fit that allowed us to actually scale. And I think in those 3 years, we've like learned every way how to optimize cash, how to hustle, how to stay alive. And these are the couple of years where we were profitable, because we didn't have like this engine that we can raise for, and we didn't just want to raise for the sake of just getting money without having a product that scales. So I completely agree with Abdurrahman. However, severe lack of function, as Peter was saying, can hinder your growth, because you can't like invest in the assets or invest in the talents and acquire the talents that is needed for you to build a world-class product. So I think having funding early on is always not a good way.
Yeah, no, I think definitely. Peter, the mic is yours.
So just I wanted to just highlight one thing. Sometimes maybe everyone just focuses on the articles that are coming through from TechCrunch, but I think it is important for everyone to also understand the early story. When I was starting my business, my wife and I, we sold our home to finance our business. That means that, you've thrown everything that you have to ensure that that business works. Now, stories like those sometimes are kind of glossed over, or no one really thinks about that in the early days, because in the early days, no one really believes in you, or they want to see a lot of proof that whatever it is that you're putting together is working. And the key thing is that, sometimes entrepreneurship is a very, very lonely space. And sometimes we pick up 1% of the stories that we hear out there and essentially try to project that to be the norm. And that's really not the case. What I would say is that, always go back to, what problem am I trying to solve? What is my addressable market? And how do I then need to solve that? If I could solve the problem that I'm trying to solve without raising capital, I would gladly do it. But the key thing is that it is always important to go back to, why do I exist? If you're not true to that, and you want to more or less raise money and ride the wave, you can do that. But the key thing is that in more instances, you're basically enjoying the warmth of a paper fire. The day it goes off, and it goes off quick.
That's a very visceral metaphor. Dimeji, do you want to go? And then Damila, the mic is yours.
Sure thing. Yeah, thanks, Peter. That was, I think you painted the picture very well. And I'll just also go on and say that, the foundation of the business has to be right before anything else, So, if the trajectory of the company without any funding is strong, then the funding would then expedite that, and there's no way the business won't succeed, right? But if right from the foundation there was no thought put in the business, no research, the addressable market isn't right, no matter the amount of funding, it's just not going to work, So the funding more or less is like it amplifies what is already there, So, and it could go either way. So if what's already there is destined to go up, then the funding will let it, go up. And if what's already there is destined to go down, then no matter the funding, it's going down. So, I would say the focus initially should be on the plan, focusing on the product and the market, and then the funding can then, support that.
Totally. To just buttress what everybody has said before. Yeah, why did we raise funds? When we started raising, the reason why we started to go raise funds from VCs was that we saw that we needed to grow. We were very comfortable with our position. We were making money, we were profitable, but we're not growing, right? And we saw in the news that a company similar to us that started a year after us, by the way, was about to enter our market. And it was shocking to know that they had gone to raise about $120 million. Right now they've IPO'd, by the way. And they were able to do all of that, not because maybe they were the smartest. They had access to a lot of cash, right? So when we figured it out, we've done the hard work. We built the system, the fundamentals, but this comes to a particular point in time where you will not just grow without funding. You will not be able to attract talent. You will be able to. Culture is for those who have funding. You will not even know what's called culture. When you don't have money to hire these strong hands, you cannot expand. Like, we were literally on maybe 10 routes. Now we're on 75 routes in Lagos. We can talk about our metrics, and expanding to other cities. We're now in Abuja, thinking of going outside of Nigeria. You not think about that when you're fundraising. Just think about survival and just to sustain yourself, right? But it really boils down to your goal. What was really, if you want to build a lifestyle business, don't bother with VC funding. Just maintain just try to grow a profitable business. But if you like to grow like a global company, expand to other markets, out of those markets into other, all over the world, you need funding to to fund that growth. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm going to tweet later. Culture is for those who are funding. I think that's hilarious. Okay, I'm getting a signal that we're running way out of time. So I guess what I'll just do at this point, sorry to those in the audience here is what I'll actually do is just have each founder, we'll go back the way we came. So Dami first, Abdel, Islam, Dimeji, Peter, any sort of closing remarks, if you will, to our audience this evening, both online and in, I guess, the room with us.
So I'm currently in Bay Area, San Francisco. I came here for the first time for just a few weeks. And I met with a lot of Nigerians in the diaspora. And I was really just telling them that, guys, like, Africans will build Africa. I was at TechCrunch Mobility, and the innovations there were not things I could relate with, right? You're building autonomous cars and spending billions of dollars to build smart cars that will drive itself. When Africans are looking for clean and affordable transportation. And we would never want to eliminate the role of a driver because that would just cause unemployment, right? So I realized that Africans' problem is very peculiar to us, and we can't do it alone, right? We need collaboration of those who are in diaspora, either by volunteering their skills or using their skills or their expertise to collaborate with what is happening back home, or by investing through angel investors or syndicates. There are so many syndicates right now that they can join, and just not just being an onlooker, but just getting involved. Also keeping in touch with also what is going on in Africa, so that as things are moving on, a lot of entrepreneurs are creating innovative ideas. There are still tons of solutions that need to be implemented in Africa, so that you're not really left behind as the value is being created in Nigeria. So as for entrepreneurs, I mean, I'm hearing so many news about there's no much cash flow. I mean, people are still getting funded. I see the cup half full. The focus should just be on building sustainable solutions, because there's still investments out there. And when you find your own people, they would join you on the journey to solve that problem and support you in any way that you need.
Thank you so much, Dami. Abdel? Yeah, so we're going now. Yeah, Abdel.
I love what Dami said, like Africans will build Africa. That's extremely powerful. And I think, and it speaks to something that I will try to echo in a kind of like an advice format, just to keep it short and simple. For any of the young people that are sitting in the crowd or that are watching us today, or like regardless of whatever your age is or your background is, if you're thinking ever of building a company, your company is only going to be interesting because you solved the hard problem, right? And that means you have to be prepared to go through something hard every single day as an outcome of that, because you're solving a hard problem. So you're going to live a hard life. So the grass is not greener. When you see the Forbes articles and the YC snippets and the fundraising, and like you think that the founders are sitting in the background, that we go to the office and we're holding the millions of dollars and we put them around the campfire and we're all celebrating day and night. That's not what happens at all. Most of the days when you walk into the office, I cannot use censored words, so I'm not going to say how bad it can get sometimes, but that's because you're solving a hard problem. So always make that the core of what drives you, is that you're actually solving a real problem, and make that your obsession and the thing that drives you, because that is the only thing that will make your company interesting, either for your customer base, either for your users, or later on for investors. That is the only interesting thing about a company, is that it solves a real problem. So try to build real companies, because that's what entrepreneurs do. If you just want to build a hack that's going to make you some cash, and then you're going to put it on a Ponzi scheme and take some money from investors and then give them to other investors, and then they come in and they check out from around and then they give them. A lot of people did that, and they do it for the fame, and it happens. And I want to advise you to not confuse hard work or entrepreneurs that did hard work with luck, because there's a lot of luck going around. It's a great trait to have. Coming across an opportunity and building a business and cashing out $100 million, of course, is an incredible thing. But is that really entrepreneurship? Take a deeper look and look at what entrepreneurs are building. And if you decide to build, then be willing to put in the hard effort and the hard work that goes behind building something that is valuable, even if it's rough in the beginning. So these are my 2 cents for the day, and I check out after that.
Thank you. Abdel, don't be referencing age like that. Don't let these people know our age. What's wrong with you? Islam, the mic is yours.
No, I agree with everything that have been said, and I think the word, I mean, the word challenge, I mean, we need to look at all the challenges and turn them into opportunities, because as we're all saying, we have a lot of challenges, but this gives us a lot of room to actually innovate and do problem solving. And as my fellow panelists were saying, the harder the problem, the harder the work required, but the more value can be created. So don't take like the easy way out. Try to solve problems that are scalable, problems that actually you can create value for others, because I mean, the value that you're being created is part of what you capture. So the more value you create, the bigger you can capture, the more cash flow you can generate. Think of things that are mostly requires IP in order to solve, because this is something, I mean, we live in a digital age. You can have easier distribution if you're doing something in software or in SaaS. But as Peter was saying, you need to roll up your sleeves. You need to do the hard work. But I mean, we're super excited. We think that we have a huge market in Africa. We have huge, very talented people. Now we have a bit of a mature VC ecosystem. It has matured in the past 3-4 years. I feel regulators and people started thinking that, I mean, startups are a good thing, because I mean, back then 5 years ago, and just hiring people, they were just saying, I'm not a loser. I'm not go work for a startup. People thought that, I mean, we started a company because nobody wanted to hire us. So I mean, just like having a startup was like, oh, why are you at the startup? I mean, why aren't you like working in a normal company? Most probably nobody wanted to hire you. So I mean, step by step, this people started understanding why startup exists and wanted to join startups. So we're very excited. I think we have a rough 2 to 3 years ahead, but again, this would differentiate for people, as Abdurrahman was saying, or just following the trend and from people that are solving real problems and doing so in a healthy manner.
Thank you so much, Islam. Dimeji?
Yeah, thanks, Islam, for that. And I think I'll just end with saying that, if you're thinking about starting a business and you're looking at the market now, you're like, everything is, going down and things are looking bad and, investors don't want to give money. But I mean, at the end of the day, there are many great businesses that have been built in, terrible market conditions. So I would say, just take the leap still, go for it. I mean, in times like these, great businesses are built, right? And there's always a need that can be tapped and that will be tapped. So if you don't do it, someone else is going to do it. So why not, try, go for it. If it doesn't work, at least, you tried. And if it works, then, it's a great feeling, and, there'll be a lot of achievement that, and a lot of people that you would have impacted along the way. So yeah, there's just always an opportunity to tap. And yeah, I would say, don't let the market conditions scare you.
Very positive. Peter?
Thank you so much. I like the analogy around solving hard problems. My closing advice is stay curious. And the reason I would say stay curious is because the problems that Africa faces are basic but very big. Just to give you context, the wholesale price of tomatoes in California is $100 a ton. In Kenya is $420 a ton. In Kinshasa is $2,500 a ton. So you need to ask yourself why. And how do you then solve a problem like that? Today, an average consumer in Africa is spending 50 to 60% of their disposable income on food, an equivalent amount that the US consumer was spending 150 years ago. Today, they only spend 7%. The question is why? So there's so many basic developmental issues that we need to solve in Africa. And the key thing is that I believe strongly that entrepreneurs will be the people who actually move the needle in Africa. because I think the thing is that, our governments have shown their limitations. So, and I'm really, really excited that we're here talking about entrepreneurship. And I just want to encourage everyone, stay curious and stay focused.
Thank you so much, everyone. Peter, Dimeji, Islam, Abdul, Dami, thank you so much for all of these contributions. I think there's a few people in the comments trying to connect with you guys. I guess we can have that conversation later, but yeah, thank you so much for giving us your time this evening, everyone. If we get...
Thank you.
So yeah, I think we will move on to our next panel. Yes. Okay, cool. Can everyone hear me? Okay, can everyone hear me online? Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Fikayo, for that very wonderful session. I have to say it was quite enlightening to me. I think the audience agree as well. I'm kind of waiting for signal to know if the panelists are online currently. So we are expecting Ahmed from Brimo, Josh Chiboeze from Piggy Vest, Murray from Webfluential, and Lami from, Jihan Abbas from Lami. Yeah, nice. Welcome, Murray. Welcome, Jihan. Nice, Ahmed. Thank you so much. Okay, great. I'm going to try to do it this way, right? I'm going to try to link with the previous panel, and then we can build up from there. But before we start, I want everyone who is a panelist to introduce themselves. And before then, I would like to say at least who I am. My name is Emeka. I'm currently studying for a PhD here in Oxford in the Department of Engineering Sciences. Prior to coming here, I also had a bit of experience in the startup sector, so working to improve electricity and energy access in Nigeria, and then discovering some of the significant challenges in policy and finance, and hence coming to Oxford to kind of find answers to some of those. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot from you guys, and also I'm sure the audience are looking to learn that as well. So I would want us to start by introducing ourselves, and maybe we can start with Murray, then Jihan and Ahmed. If you can tell us about who you are and what you do so that the audience can understand perfectly who we are talking to.
Thanks very much, Emeka. Thank you for taking some time to explore all of these topics. It was great to listen to the first panel this evening. So my name is Murray. I'm based in Johannesburg. I'm an engineer by sort of profession, and I've spent some time in banking and technology. And I think Peter mentioned it about just being curious. So that's something that I've kind of always been with regards to engineering or banking or technology. And the business that I started is called Webfluential. It's a platform for content creators, we help them market and monetize themselves. And it already starts with a story. I mean, so many of the speakers earlier this evening were mentioning that, an idea sparks with somebody, and how that travels into their community, their country, and then the greater continent is really through storytelling. So we believe that particularly people on the continent have incredible stories to tell, and the leverage of technology allows them to reach lots more people, not just locally, but internationally. And we took a bet on that sort of thesis in 2014, where we could help content creators leverage their stories to the rest of the world and also earn an income by connecting them with brands. So 8 years on, we've helped just over 200,000 people earn an income from their social media presence and storytelling.
That's absolutely amazing. I mean, 200,000 people earning an income. That's good. And there's thumbs up coming from the room for you. I think next we can listen to Jihan. Just tell us about yourself and what you do.
Hello, hi everyone. My name is Jihan Abbas. I'm the founder and CEO of Lami. Lami is an insurtech based out of Kenya, based out of Nairobi. The problem that we're really solving for is really the fact that across Africa, there's a very, very low level of insurance penetration. It's less than 3%. And it's the same mirrored pretty much across other developing countries as well, across the world. You know, when you look at Africa as a continent, I don't know, there's more than 1,000 insurance companies offering insurance products. However, again, the penetration level is really low. So what we've built is really the core gap that we saw, essentially the fact that there's no technological infrastructure to facilitate the easy and simple distribution of insurance products. So Lami is an end-to-end insurance API. We provide, you know, real-time pricing of insurance products, underwriting, claims processing, servicing of policies, all through a platform and API that, you know, digital platforms and banks are able to plug in to offer insurance products to their customer base. One of the issues that we realized actually was that, you know, people didn't really trust insurance companies. You know, they didn't really trust that the process worked, that they were going to get their claims paid out. So we go through partners to be able to offer these products and leverage on the trust that businesses have already built with their customer base to be able to contextualize the sale of insurance products.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jihan. That's amazing stuff as well. Like, really great. I know when I was in Nigeria, I was not subscribing to any insurance because I did not trust any insurance company here, I have to say. So next, Ahmed, please tell us about yourself and what you do.
Hello, everyone. This is Ahmed Cheikha from Bremor, from Egypt. My background was in FMCG industry. I used to work in P&G. Working mostly with Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Nigeria, and then working with Egypt as well. And later I quit and I joined a startup in education where I believe that that was a core problem in Egypt to solve and work on. And this is where I learned actually about digital products in general. And then I went for my master's in entrepreneurship and innovation management in KTH in Stockholm, Sweden. Currently, I'm the co-founder and chief business officer of Bremor. Bremor is a social commerce and parallel distribution platform connecting emerging brand owners with a network of individual sellers who market and sell these products on social media, allowing the first to have a smooth market access and the second to have a decent monthly income. Over the past 4 years, we grew around 400x to cover all of Egypt. Currently, our network has around 100,000 online resellers, and we work with 300 local suppliers, promoting around 8,000 different products in the market. Our team also has grown to around 1,000 people at the moment. Our vision is to enable suppliers solve the go-to-market barrier that we see in our markets through creating a very granularized network of demand generators who can actually bridge the trust deficit that we see for local products.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ahmed. And I think with this, I'm going to kick off with like the panel discussion. One thing I noticed in everything that all of you were saying is that you try to very quickly sell your value because it appears as though you consider that the potential clients as well listening to you. And then, I mean, I think that's really amazing. I think another thing again is that kind of interlinks with everything that was said in the previous panel about staying curious, about finding value, I mean, in your environment. And as a result of that, I'm going to start with Webfluential, with Murray. I want you to kind of educate us a bit about how you were able to identify value in this space, because I mean, there isn't a lot of people who think about like influencers as a way of deriving revenue. I mean, the whole space is kind of a bit nascent.
So like, how did you think about that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room and online who are probably considering starting something novel. And a lot of them are thinking, oh, what is this idea I'm going to come up with? And then what everyone else has been saying is that there are a lot of problems around. But then I want you to like walk us through how you derived this problem, which is kind of your why of starting Webfluential.
Sure. So there's quite a lot to it, and what's been interesting for us is to be able to see so many use cases over the years. The challenge with our business, and I think for a lot of the entrepreneurs out there, when you create a marketplace, you need both sides of the marketplace to be present. So it's the chicken and egg situation, and for us, it was content creators and brands to have both of those present at the same time. So I mean, early on, we had this idea that we wanted to start the African Blogger Awards. In some respects, it dealt with the issue. And I mean, back in 2014, when we started, venture capital in Africa was not a thing at all. So we really had to bootstrap ourselves. So I mean, given that constraint, and I think it was a good lesson early on for us, is don't rely on your idea only taking flight when you have capital. You should actually see if you can get it going early on without capital, and try and get to your first 1,000 true fans. At that point, you know that you've got at least the semblance of a product market fit, but also a minimum viable community. A minimum viable community is something that's so important for businesses these days, because it's you need a community to sell into, someone or a group of people that are interested in what you have to sell and the value that you have to provide to them. So what we said was, okay, we think that there's some incredible stories being told on the continent, and we think that they don't have the right amplification. We think that content creators are not being heard, and they might not have even considered earning an income by being able to work with brands. But what we'd like to do is to just recognize them for the great work that they're doing, whether it was for education, for women's rights, for politics, for sport. So we created a number of categories, and we had a call for entries across the continent to invite people to motivate why they should win these awards. Interestingly, the phone rang, and it was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And they wanted to sponsor the initiative because they believed in a number of those pillars, and particularly women's rights and education, and they wanted to support those stories being further amplified. So what went on, subsequent to that, was we built a community of influencers, some that won awards in the African Blogger Awards, which we ran for a number of years. And then what we ended up doing was assembling a community of people that were interested in sharing their stories with a broader part of the ecosystem. We then went to a few brands and said, look, we've got these great people out there who are amplifiers and spokespeople, and they have social leverage to be able to travel a message to a number of people. And there's a degree of trust that sort of comes behind that. So our first big win was Barclays came to us and said, we're interested in localizing a number of savings products for a number of African markets. And can they ask influencers to poll their audiences about how they currently save, how much do they save, what are the returns that they get, how much do they put into airtime, etc. And it was such a great social experiment because we worked with these content creators and with Barclays to be able to go and get a lot of local knowledge from these communities. And then Barclays was able to design their products that sort of fitted into those particular markets. And they got incredible uptake because they'd done their local market research. So it was an interesting channel from there. And really where it's gone to, and the question around how we create value, it's always just in storytelling. The medium and the message are the two kind of key components in that mix. And the medium keeps changing. TikTok wasn't around a number of years ago, and now it's like the most prevalent means of communication. We also see that the cost of data and the capacity for bandwidth is increasing. So people like, across the continent can watch can watch videos, high definition videos, as opposed to being able to only read tweets a number of years ago. So that's a net positive for education. I mean, now everybody can watch YouTube and get educated. They can get up to date on what the latest news and insights is. So the medium is evolving, whether it's YouTube, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Twitter, but the message is the most important thing. So for us, we don't think that the storytelling element is going away anytime soon. So for us, we just want to be able to support as many people as we can, and we love technology for that because it provides us with that leverage, and then we ultimately solve some problems and we help people make an income by doing so.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think one of the things I picked up from your storyline is the fact that your product kind of evolved over time. So you were initially thinking of, creating ways of recognizing people, and then it eventually turned into like a revenue generation model, basically. So I think I want to like move on from that now and move to Jihan. So you're doing something really amazing with like InsurTech, like end-to-end insurance and stuff. So I just want to know, like, did you conceptualize the idea like that from the beginning, or did it change a bit over time? So that's kind of, would I say, one part of the question. And then the second part, which is supposed to lead us to the next part of the conversation, is about the kind of risks you face. So people have mentioned like infrastructure being one of the limitations, right? So assuming you have like bad roads and you're insuring cars, it means there's a higher tendency that those cars will get bad. So like, how does this affect your modeling, like your business? How does it change your bottom line in terms of revenues and profits? So if you can just briefly walk us through that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Our product really transformed over time. So we launched our first product in January 2020. And at the time, it was essentially just a car insurance app. So that was our first entry to market. We chose to do car insurance because it's a product that's mandatory in most of Africa. We said, okay, this is an easy product to do. So we started with that, product that people have been buying for hundreds of years. They understand how the product works and so on. And then we started to get a lot of requests from other platforms asking us, so can we use your technology to plug in products? So from there, we spent actually most of 2020 rebuilding our platform and then making sure that it was ready and able to distribute all kinds of product lines and be able so that the APIs are able to be used by all sorts of partners. So that sort of evolved over time. We only started doing sort of B2B, B2B2C products in 2021. So very recent. So I would say that definitely we try to, I guess, do as much research as possible, try to get insights from the market, see what people are asking us for, and then from there, of course, evolve and sort of like improve the product that we have. So that's been pretty much the journey so far. I'm sure we still add more product lines every month. We still add all sorts of capabilities as well in terms of features. So we're trying to sort of, iterate and improve the product that we have over time. In terms of risks, I think insurance is all about risk. I would say that the biggest issue in Africa is, fraud. So there's a lot of issues of fraud. People, trying to, put in false claims, for example. And also another issue is the fact that claims are not paid out. And of course, that frustrates a lot of people, but you have to ask yourself, why are claims not paid out? And I think one of the core reasons is because actually for a long time, the products haven't really been priced in the right way. So we're not really taking into account different risk parameters to be able to price products correctly. Like, for example, if somebody's buying car insurance, if they only drive to take their kids to school and go to work, they're definitely not the same. They don't have the same risk profile as somebody driving, hundreds of miles a day, right? So the key thing that we're trying to do is see how we can leverage on data to be able to improve prices for customers by, of course, taking into consideration the different risk parameters to be able to provide more affordable products, which is a gap that has been prevalent for a long time in Africa. So yeah, we try to, I think over time, the goal is really through underwriting multiple product lines, you'll be able to essentially price products better than insurance companies and then, get them to pay you for that. So that's the hope at some point later down the line. But yeah, I would say that, risk is a thing something that we think about all the time. And I think the best way to mitigate all sorts of risk is really through the data.
Amazing stuff. Data, tech is just like, resounding over and over in everyone's speech. But one thing is that not everyone in the audience is a tech person. Not everyone is a computer scientist. Not everyone is a blockchain developer. So I want to know from you, Ahmed, so when you thought of like starting your business, was it a prerequisite for you to be a tech specialist to start this? Or can ordinary people like us in this room, doctors, business people, social scientists, philosophers, how can we get involved in actually like driving some of these solutions, especially when you think you're passionate about them?
Let's just start with a ground rule here that tech itself is not an end, it's a means to something else. So what the problem your business is solving is the core. And you use technology, we either use technology to help with the scalability or to help with transparency and flow of information or for efficiency. These are the main three uses of technology that usually help the solution go to the next level. So when we started, even we did not have a mobile app. When we started with our resellers, smartphone penetration was not that prevailing in Egypt. So we had actually to be creative, and we used like WhatsApp to share pictures of the product so resellers can use it and sell it somewhere else. We even had to printed versions and send them by mail to areas where there's no internet coverage, so we can crack these areas and generate demand. And then you build a layer of technology. Once you know more about the needs of your consumers, once you know more about the needs of your systems, you start actually identifying scope. Definitely having a tech resource in the founding team is a plus. It adds a lot. It saves actually lots of time, saves money in later stages. But believe me, if you don't have a core thing to inspire technology people to come and leave other blooming opportunities somewhere else in the US or in Europe to solve a local problem, you won't sustain for long.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm curious to know why you mentioned US and Europe as places that attract these people. Is it because of funding, or is it because the systems just work better? Just very briefly.
So I come from engineering background, although I'm not like a hardcore engineer, but I can look at my class in engineering. I can see my friends. I think almost 2/3 of them are either in Europe or in the US for better work opportunities, or moving with their families for better life standards. And now we are in this phase where you got like your citizenship, you got your children are in good schools, but now you want more, you want purpose, and you want to pay back to your community. And I almost weekly get calls from friends who want actually to do something really on the ground. So being in the tech sector, definitely at these times with scarcity of supply in technology talents, the competition is high, the pay scale is different, and the interesting projects and scope for these resources is everywhere in the world. And with remote job and with remote location capabilities, definitely people can work anywhere. So there is a brain drain for tech talent, but at the same time, I see an underlying opportunity that we can definitely, if you can frame local problems and we can scale it to a global level, that's a very interesting problem to have from a technology perspective.
Nice. Thank you so much for that perspective. And I think it's very critical that we kind of tackle this whole brain drain and challenge. At this point, I would love to make it a bit more interactive with the people both online and in the room. I'm wondering if anyone in the room is very curious about something, and you can easily step forward and just ask a question to any of the panelists or to all of them in general. You're curious about doing something, starting something, raising funds, whatever it is, yeah.
Sorry, does anyone have a question? Yeah, come forward.
Hi, founders. Thank you so much for joining. I think a question we had, and it kind of alluded to in the last panel, is with the recent YC note about the change in environment for startups. How did you interpret what the language has been around adapting to the new circumstances. Because I think some people would argue a lot of startups in African countries deal with this all the time anyway. So it'd be useful to hear what perspective you guys have. And are you worried about it? Do you think it's going to affect you significantly or indifferent?
I'm happy to take a stab at that. I think a macro backdrop that kind of creates a bit of a headwind for smaller businesses and for technology-led, even bigger companies, is when it's VC-funded consumer enjoyment. So when a lot of venture capital goes into companies that allow the consumers to enjoy a benefit that they don't entirely have to pay for, it creates a bit of a precedent that can't be sustained. An example to look at here is Uber, Lyft, even Airbnb, and WeWork, where these businesses were incredibly well funded. And the pleasure was enjoyed by the consumers, but it was actually sponsored by the venture capitalists. And there was product market fit, but it was not actual economic product market fit. When those VC dollars dried up and the actual cost was passed on to the customer, demand dropped right off. Airbnb did incredibly well in not subsidizing its, even though it had so much capital, it didn't subsidize a lot of the stays. But we did see this with Uber and Lyft. I mean, Lyft just had its results out last week, which were dismal. So on a macroeconomic step, I think it's there will be some pain, but on a micro perspective, I think companies that could only exist if they get funding are probably ones that are going to be the ones that will be weeded out first. So the advice for entrepreneurs who going into a bear market or one where there's less liquidity is to really just focus on the two sides of the coin that are the most important for entrepreneurs. The first is innovation, and the second is distribution. And innovation is often kind of mixed up with technology. And what Ahmed was saying just now is you don't need to have engineers. You don't have to have the technology. What that really does is allows you to codify a process so that you could scale it. But the process starts with two people interacting and one passing value to the other in exchange for some fee. And for builders and entrepreneurs, that's really where to start, is to start on that innovation. So what is it? What is the problem that you're solving? I mean, it's great to hear about an InsurTech API. I mean, that's incredible to allow two sides of a marketplace to interact without having to reveal the brand presence. But I mean, examples like that. So creating value and innovating, but then the second part is actually distribution. So you could make the world's best product and it would be the world's best kept secret if you didn't distribute it. So distribution is so key, and that's part of your sales effort where you have, and typically this is why you'd have a co-founder. You'd have someone who thinks about it commercially and can go and sell it and package it, and you've got someone who can ideate, innovate, and codify. And those are the elements that you want to kind of pursue. It doesn't have to be VC funded. It might mean that you grow a lot slower than you'd hoped, but it also makes for a lot more sustainable businesses. So incredible businesses have been built out of downturns in the economy, out of post 2008, through COVID. I mean, look at us all enjoying Zoom now. They had their results out this last week at an 85% gross profit margin and a $40 billion market cap. This is not a business that's very old. So there's huge opportunity out there. I think also the opportunity comes from less people competing because they've decided to go back to their corporate jobs. But you know, that can also be seen as a tailwind. So I think be cautious, be careful, don't overspend on plush offices and staff. And I think what was mentioned on the previous panel is don't give away too much of your company for VC funding. If you can hold on to every last share, it's actually worth it. It makes you more hungry and it keeps more fire in your belly.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much. Does anyone else want to quickly contribute to that? just in a minute.
Yeah,
Just-
I'll.
Okay.
So you want to go ahead?
No, please go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, people keep saying that, there was a bull market for 13 years, but as far as I'm concerned, there's only been a bull market for, the last 1.5 years to 2 years. So I would say that, it's been tough before as well, and we shouldn't be afraid. And, basically, start getting, I think the whole thing about the VC ecosystem is it's all about FOMO, as soon as somebody starts saying all these things, everybody starts freaking out and it becomes this huge thing. It probably will last a few months. I don't think it's going to last that long. And the good thing I think about being in Africa as well is that, a lot of these funds have only started deploying capital here. So a lot of these US funds have only recently started deploying capital here. So I don't think it's going to necessarily, the tap isn't going to close. I wouldn't say that, but I would say that, thinking about sustainability earlier on is probably the key to ensuring that, you have that longevity in your business.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, go for it, Ahmed.
No, I just, it's usually interesting when things are rising all over the world. The diffusion of innovation takes time to reach our places, our area. But when things get really south, it's just all the same and happens all at once. And I definitely second Jihan. Like in Egypt, for example, it was not a bull market for 13 years. Like in 2011, we had the revolution, and then we stayed like for 5-6 years, and then a massive devaluation. So it's just only for 3 or 4 years, and then things started picking up. But the other thing is, being from the region, is the resilience and the level of challenges is also integrated in the day-to-day business. So I think what's going on in the world is just a business as usual in our region. So we see it as like a wave at a time, maybe 9 months, maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years. But if you survive it, you get to an almost green field again. Like many competitors get wiped out, the market is hungry over and again, and you capture all the missed opportunities.
Yeah, nice, thank you. I mean, I like the word wave because I heard it so many times a few days ago when a friend launched her book here in Oxford. But someone else wants to ask a quick question. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
I mean, I can hear you, but
No, I'm asking if they can, because usually the ceiling mic works.
Sorry,
Yeah, yeah, they can hear me.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
We can hear you.
I'm Wilsina. So in innovation, there's one of the stages called the Valley of Death. And I would imagine entrepreneurship and a startup would experience something similar. And sometimes it's anticipated based on how much research you've done. Sometimes with all the amazing research, you can't necessarily anticipate or know exactly what that big challenge would be that will make or break. And usually some startups don't make it past the Valley of Death. So I'd like to understand from the panel, what would you say was your biggest challenge? What was the Valley of Death for you, and how did you navigate through that? Thank you.
Who wants to go for it?
I can go first. Like, for us, it was one of the challenges. Actually, we've been challenged a lot by our VCs. Like 75% of our resellers are stay-at-home moms. And the challenge was, if you're gonna move to a fully automated solution with a mobile app, what will you do with the tech illiteracy and how people actually can accommodate new solutions? And what will you do from readiness perspective, from commercial and from operations perspective to do so? Because we provided for them like phone services if they want to place the order on the phone. We provided WhatsApp service if they want to place the order on WhatsApp. But if you want to streamline everything over one platform, which is a mobile app, that might be challenging over the way from user experience and from growth. And what we realized over time that, as Morey said, if you have a minimum viable community, that community actually acts as a catalyst over the way. And we harness on that community. Like if these resellers find value and they can generate income from the medium that were before, if we introduce a sound medium that can keep this steady source of income, people are willing to change, are willing to adapt. All what we need is to listen carefully and implement that. And that was a learning to us. Like whatever research you will do, whatever study that you will do, if people find real value in the transaction, they will get creative to jump any obstacle that you find in your innovative process or in your tools. All what you need is just to listen to the signals, reiterate fast, and streamline that for the rest of the population. That was our learning cycle in our business.
Nice. Thank you so much. I think I want to just kind of move us a bit towards another direction. I read a Financial Times article recently that talked about the growing trends of investments in Africa, which was again reiterated in the earlier panel, close to $5 billion in 2021. However, at the same time, the US saw investments of $320 billion. Now, most of the investments coming to Africa are also coming from like the West, the US, Europe, and co. The question is like, why is it that African, companies are not necessarily investing in some of these high-tech, innovative, or risky ideas? Is it because they think that this sector has not been validated enough, or is it because they are just too conventional? Like I want to hear one day say Dangote invests say $200 million in some startup. I'm kind of curious why. Have you tried to interact with some of these people, or it's just not happening?
Maybe I'll jump in. So I think one of the things is that, again, there's sort of trends in venture capital. It's sort of like, what is the hot industry right now? So if an industry is like a frontier industry, a lot of the investors actually, are more reluctant or afraid to invest in that said industry. We saw similar things, even when payments was coming up when it was new, same for the rest of fintech. And then for me also in the insurtech space, nobody wanted to hear anything about insurtech like 3 years ago. It was like, nobody wanted to hear it. It was everybody was afraid. And, a lot of investors didn't even consider it fintech at the time. So I would say that, there's those kinds of trends that really influence where the money is going within the ecosystem and also within the landscape as a whole. When you ask the question of why, a lot of Africans are not really funding the tech ecosystem, I think that's a very good question. And I would say that without that changing, without the LPs of some of these VCs being African companies, all the money is going to end up actually leaving Africa. That's the reality of it, So despite the fact that, we're getting all these businesses funded, there's all these like unicorns, at the end of the day, the cap table of those unicorns is probably predominantly US-based VCs, and the money is going to be left elsewhere. So I think we need to see how to, I guess, change the view of technology as being risky. And I think that's been the big issue, is that, people view it as too big a risk. And people also tend to not want to invest in things that they don't understand. I think is very much a generational thing. I see the same thing, even for example, with my father. It's like, I don't go into areas that I don't understand. And I think it's the same thing that we see for a lot of these people who are, wealthy individuals who actually could be making a big impact in the growth of Africa's tomorrow.
Has anyone else got like a different experience about this?
I think, maybe just the sort of insight around, every investment is risk return based. So an investor will look for the best potential return for the risk that they're taking. And they're either going to deploy that, for the most part, into a B2B or a B2C business. And the thing that's going to drive a return for them is the purchasing power of either that consumer in a B2C or the business in a B2B basis. So often, the investor will have some network effects and some credibility and ability to add some secret sauce to their investment, and that's why they'll stick to their domain. But also, I think just the nature of where the purchasing power sits, that's really where a lot of the investments will go. But at the same time, competition will then force investment vehicles to start looking further afield to find those next opportunities. And with such an amazing continent of burgeoning opportunity, I think that's exactly why so much more capital is coming here now, is because it's really Africa's time to shine. So it's not just local entrepreneurs and funders and investors that want to kind of keep up this flywheel of momentum. It's also the rest of the world that's taken a really curious lens over our continent.
Amazing stuff. Amazing. Ahmed, do you want to drop quick insights?
Yeah, I think as Peter mentioned before in the last panel, the whole concept of the asset light model, it simply doesn't work in our markets. So when you start a business, you don't achieve just a trajectory of growth for your core unit economics. You also utilize the funds to build other things around. And for investors, this is not a sexy thing at all because it increases the risk. If I'm giving you the money to grow your user base 10x and you utilize part of this money to build an infrastructure, it slows the growth and hence puts the investment at a riskier phase. That annotation, we've been living through it in the previous period, and I think it will sustain for a while until it's proven correct on the ground. The other part is what we found really useful is benchmarking towards the Indian and Chinese market versus comparing to the Silicon Valley and Western Europe businesses. And this is where really things start to make sense. If you grow in an emerging market where there's challenges in the infrastructure and you cannot like build sustainable partnerships over the way, and you have resources in manpower, you have resources in frugal innovation, then I think it's time to evaluate this differently and evaluate the return in a different way. The second part is the number of exits in the region. I think with more exits coming in, that would increase the confidence of the investors. It will increase a ripple effect of angel investors who can actually make businesses proof concepts faster, hence get better valuation, hence get better tickets in investment.
Nice. Thank you so much. I'm also very conscious of the fact that time is running out, and I think I saw someone in the audience raise their hands. Is the hand still up? Okay, cool. I have tons of questions for you guys, but I think just before we round up quickly, there are two things that I want the audience to probably take away from here today. So one is, you did mention, I mean, it kept reverberating somehow, the issue of complementary services. So it's like you're delivering something, you want someone else to do something that can enable what you're doing, like this TikTok that's enabling Webfluential, for instance. So I'm going to say, and again, like just to kind of match that with what's happening here, in this room and in the audience are some of the brightest minds in the world. So I want to ask you just very quickly, in the businesses that you're doing, what is that kind of, intervention point, that idea that you think that some of the people here should start thinking about with respect to solving some of the biggest problems in Africa? Like, I mean, I really like the statement earlier, which was that Africans will solve Africa's problems. So what should we begin to think about to solve these problems?
I think it probably starts with belief. So whether that's in the fact that you could solve the problem that you're looking at, whether you think that you can build a story and some energy around that problem that you want to solve, and that you believe that you have a shot at being able to solve it. I think that's where it starts. So because the world is so interconnected and there's such amazing network effects that are possible. I mean, just look at how we're chatting between the four corners of Africa and Oxford this evening. That's the start of belief that you could actually move the needle. And if you put that energy into your community and you start giving to your community some of that belief, it might actually come back to you in the form of resource. And that resource could be capital, it could be a co-founder, it could be your first customer, it could be the first time that you get interviewed on a major network, it could be your first employee that you hire. So it all starts with belief and sharing that belief. And I think if you chip away at that every single day, I think you're onto something, and you're probably going to make a success of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think also just for Jihan and Ahmed, just in addition to that one, kind of underlining, factor, if you can give us one idea that we should start thinking about, like, let's say for Jihan with InsurTech, there's something that probably you think is the biggest challenge. So what is it that is that thing that other people can now try to create a product to solve, in addition to the whole ideology around belief and hard work? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think when it comes to a lot of financial services in Africa, I think one of the key problems that we have is really the education piece, getting people to understand, that they need some of these products, especially because, they rely heavily on single sources of income. A lot of people in Africa do that. But we're not really thinking about, the sustainability or really understanding how we can empower ourselves with financial services. So I would say that's really one of the key areas that makes my life super difficult, because I'm sitting there trying to explain to somebody, why you really need insurance. It's really going to change your life. And, it could mean that it could actually change the trajectory of your future, So I would say that has really been a key part that's really missing in a lot of, I would say across the continent, really, is that understanding of the benefits of financial services and the education piece.
Okay, so guys, you've heard it. Begin to think about fintech, edtech. So Ahmed, just very quickly, what is it? One word, the ideology, and then one word, that innovation that you would want us to think about.
I think one important factor is the localization of literature. You read literature that was produced and applied in a completely different area of the world. And when you get on the ground, things somehow are a little bit different. So the word efficiency and this industrialized word is completely different than efficiency in a house that has 9 children and people actually need to work to sustain their living and at the same time creating value. So bridging the value created with the localized terms that we usually study about in literature and want to apply in our continent, I think it's really important and it's valuable. The same for purchasing power. Yes, there might be a low purchasing power, but that's in the official reports. In the informal economy and the unorganized market, there is way more value in the transaction. There's way more value in the social credit that people have altogether, where they create other means of transaction that we can leverage on and we can actually enable. So that's another area that we need to understand on the ground, where innovation and application comes hand in hand for our continent.
Thank you so much. Again, everyone has heard it. Localized content. Africans should solve Africa's problems and begin to think a bit differently about the way we see problems and challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we'll mark the end of this panel session. We'll resume again tomorrow at 9 a.m. to continue with some other, very enlightening conversations about the startup ecosystem and how we can contribute towards solving problems in Africa. I want everyone to please give a beautiful round of applause to the panelists. And a beautiful round of applause to the audience as well. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, panelists, and bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. For those who are here, there's just some refreshments outside. Be refreshed.
There's drinks in the